got married. 3 years into our marriage he cheated on me. He installed cameras in our bedroom just to prove to that woman that he never touched me. As I scrolled through social media, a flashy post caught my eye. A blogger named Sophia Richard had just posted a picture of an Hermes Birkin bag with the caption, "Thank you, my love." A little gift from his business trip to France for this soon-to-be mom. The location tag. The most exclusive neighborhood in San Francisco. The comments were flooded with admiration. Everyone envied Mrs. Richard, her wealth, her romance, her perfect life. And it would have been enviable indeed, if the dear husband she was talking about wasn't mine. My fingers hovered over the keyboard before I typed a single line beneath her post. "You should be more discreet." A second later, Sophia Richard fired back. "You're just jealous." I stared at her reply, chuckled, and leaned back in my chair. A plan was already forming in my mind. I turned my gaze to the Birkin sitting beside me, the one Vincent had brought back from France. A high-quality counterfeit. Switching from my dummy account to my personal profile, I snapped a few close-ups of the bag and its receipt. Then, with a casual flick of my fingers, I crafted a new post. "Sis, my husband got me this on his trip to France, but something feels off. Can anyone help me verify if it's real?" Satisfied, I logged out and went back to my tasks, patiently waiting for the next move. Vincent and I had been together for 10 years. I thought we had a solid marriage until I found out he was secretly supporting a mistress. A college student, no less. It all started 6 months ago at my alma mater's centennial celebration. Vincent and I, both honored as distinguished alumni, had been invited to give speeches. That was when she latched onto him. Sophia, a young university student, bright-eyed and full of youthful charm. She had looked up at Vincent with shy admiration, her voice sweet and hesitant. "Mr. Richard, I'm sorry to bother you, but I didn't quite understand parts of your speech. Would it be okay if I added you on social media? Maybe you could help me if I have questions." Back then I still saw Vincent as a principled man, someone who knew his boundaries. He had glanced at me for approval and I, trusting, had smiled and nodded. Little did I know, that moment was the beginning of the end for the marriage I had cherished so dearly. Vincent had never been good at lying. Perhaps it was because he had been faithful for so long that deception didn't come naturally to him. Every little change in his behavior stood out like a glaring red flag. At first it was the way he smiled at his phone, secretively like a love-struck teenager. But the second I came near, he would hastily lock the screen, his body stiff with guilt. Then, the messages he used to send me during his work breaks became less frequent. Our conversations became less and less. Next came the sudden surge in business trips, the dwindling intimacy, and then one day he installed security cameras in our bedroom. I had frowned, confused. "Why?" Vincent had gently stroked my hair and smiled. "There have been a lot of break-ins in our neighborhood. Mrs. Nancy next door just had her necklace stolen. I'm away so often and I worry about your safety. This way I can check in on you while I'm traveling. It helps me feel at ease." That night, as I stepped out of the shower, I noticed his phone lying on the counter. Its screen lit up with a notification. I had never been the kind of wife who snooped through her husband's phone. But Vincent's recent behavior had left me with no choice. I hesitated for only a moment, then reached for it. His phone password was still my birthday. The moment I unlocked it, my eyes widened. "Is the camera installed?" That single jarring message sat in the chat window, quickly followed by another. "Vincent, you promised me you're not allowed to touch her." The sender? Sophia. I scrolled up. But their previous messages had been wiped clean. Not a trace left. And just like that, everything clicked. Vincent had betrayed our decade-long relationship for Sophia. Had even installed surveillance cameras in our bedroom to prove to her that he wasn't touching me. I put back the phone back to the original place, pretending I'd seen nothing. Thankfully, the cameras hadn't been activated yet, which meant Vincent had no idea I'd snooped through his phone. I took a deep breath, smoothed out my emotions, and when Vincent stepped out of the shower, I greeted him with a sweet, affectionate kiss. He subtly turned his head, avoiding my lips with a polite smile. "Don't be like that. I'm exhausted." Ah, the devoted husband, preserving his loyalty for his mistress. After discovering Vincent's affair with Sophia, I decided it was time to return to the company. When he saw me walk into the office, the shock on his face was priceless. I leisurely observed the storm of emotions flickering across his features. It took him a moment to regain composure before he finally asked, Elena, what are you doing here? I stepped closer, my tone light and playful. Well, you're always so busy with work and I barely get to see you. It gets lonely at home, you know? So I asked my dad to reinstate my position at the company. This way we can be together every day. After graduation, Vincent and I had both joined my family's business. My father wanted to groom me for future leadership, preparing me to take over the company someday. But Vincent had played the doting husband, claiming he hated to see me overwhelmed with work. Let me handle it all, Head said. You deserve to relax. Blinded by love, I had been foolish enough to believe him, never realizing his true intentions. Over the years, Head quietly built his influence within the company, securing a significant amount of power. Honey, I added with a pout, you're working too hard. It's not good for your health. So, I talked to Dad and he's approved a 2-week vacation for you. You need to rest. ID already made the arrangements without asking for Vincent's opinion. The moment the words left my lips, his face darkened. That's not necessary, he said quickly, his jaw tightening. I don't need a break. There are important deals I need to handle. After a brief pause, he forced a calm tone. Elena, you're being impulsive. What if this delays critical contracts? That could seriously. I pressed a finger gently against his lips, cutting him off with a playful smile. Relax, Vincent. I'm sure my dad can handle things just fine. Then, feigning a little frustration, I added, I only did this because I'm worried about you. I just want you to rest. His expression softened slightly, though the tension lingered beneath the surface. He pulled me into a stiff embrace. Thank you, Elena. I wrapped my arms around his neck, my voice dropping to a soft whisper. The weather's perfect this time of year in San Francisco. The beach house is sitting empty. Why don't you spend some time there? Watch the ocean. Clear your mind. I watched as his resistance melted away. His eyes lit up and he squeezed my hand gently. Elena, you're amazing. I couldn't help but smile. I knew he meant it. He truly believed I was the perfect, considerate wife, generous enough to give him and Sophia their little vacation in peace. But while Vincent was away, I'd be right here, reclaiming every ounce of power Head stolen from me at the company. As expected, Vincent took Sophia to the beach house for his little vacation. He even forgot my birthday was coming up. That morning, instead of waking up to a text or call from my loving husband, my phone lit up with something even more surprising, a call from my father. Elena, since Vincent isn't home, why don't you come over? It's your birthday. I got you a big cake. I knew he was trying to win me over. Despite the generous allowance Head sent me every month since college, we'd never really been close. We coexisted in silence, our conversations limited to polite exchanges during family gatherings, until recently when I reached out to him asking to return to the company. Of course, Head been thrilled. I might have been blind to Vincent's ambitions, but my father, an old shark in the business world, had seen right through him. I was his only child. If I didn't take over the company, it would inevitably fall into Vincent's hands. And my father wasn't about to hand over his life's work to an outsider. When I arrived, he was already waiting in the dining room, sitting stiffly at the head of the table. On the serving cart beside him stood an enormous birthday cake, 27 layers tall. Right. I was 27 today. I took a seat across from him. My father's eyes grew misty, his hands trembling slightly as he stood to cut the cake. You used to love birthdays when you were little, he murmured, voice gruff with emotion. Back then. Your smile lit up the whole room. I cut him off, my tone light but edged with steel. Dad, do you know why Vincent isn't home for his vacation? He froze mid-slice. I smiled. Because right now he's with another woman. Tell me, do you think he even remembers it's my birthday? When I was a kid, we didn't have much. My father's business ventures had failed more times than I could count, but my parents never let me feel the weight of it. On my birthdays, they'd scrape together enough to buy the prettiest cake they could find. We'd sit together, just the three of us. I'd blow out the candles and make the same wish every year. I want to be happy with mommy and daddy forever. Eventually, my father hit it big. Caught the right wave at the right time, and suddenly money was no object. But happiness, that was another story. Soon there were always different women by his side. New faces, new smiles. None of them my mother's. One birthday I finally asked, why isn't daddy coming home? Did he forget it's my birthday? My mother had smiled, fed me a bite of cake, tucked me into bed, and then locked herself in the bathroom and ended her life. Since then, my birthday had been more than just a date on the calendar. It was the anniversary of the day my mother gave up. After that, I moved in with my aunt. I wanted nothing to do with my father. Not a call. Not a visit. Not a word. Not until I graduated from college. The memory snapped like a brittle thread, pulling me back to the present. I walked over to the towering cake and looked at my father, the man who was older now, softer around the edges, but still carrying the weight of every choice he'd ever made. My voice was calm, measured. "I'll handle Vincent. I just need you to back me up." I dipped my finger into the frosting, tasted it, and smiled faintly. "It doesn't taste the same anymore." Of course, it didn't. I wasn't that little girl anymore, the one who believed birthdays were about family, cake, and wishes that actually came true. The day was getting late. When Vincent called, I was at the cemetery, visiting my mother's grave. I ignored the first call, then the second, and the third. Finally, I picked up. For a moment, there was only silence on the other end, then his voice, soft, filled with guilt. "I'm sorry, Elena. I can't believe I forgot such an important day." Back in college, not long after we'd started dating, Vincent found out my birthday was also the anniversary of my mother's death. His eyes had welled with tears the moment I told him. His face etched with raw sympathy. My dad had someone else. My mom couldn't take it. That was all ID said. Simple sentence. But Vincent had pulled me into his arms, holding me like he could shield me from the past. We'd cursed the world together that night, raged against cheaters and liars, swearing we'd never betray each other. Never. After that, had insisted on visiting my mother's grave with me every year. He said it wasn't just for me, it was for her. "Your mom needs to see that you're happy, Elena. That you're loved." And for 10 years, had kept that promise. Till now. This was the first time I stood here alone. I guess he just forgot. Or maybe he was too busy. Funny how promises only seem to matter in the moment they're made. My voice was soft, carried by the evening breeze. "Vincent, how do you plan to make it up to me?" He whispered my name, full of remorse. "Elena." I let out a light laugh, sharp as glass hidden under velvet. "My dad said you'll be heading to France for a business trip after your vacation. Why don't you bring me back a bag? You know what I like. Surprise me." "Of course," he replied quickly, eager to redeem himself. "We'll catch the next flight home to be with you." "No need," I said sweetly. "Enjoy your vacation." There was a pause, a flicker of hesitation before he agreed. "Vincent," I added softly, "say happy birthday to me one more time, okay?" The call ended soon, and almost instantly a notification popped up on my phone, Sophia's latest post. Her account was new, crafted with the perfect blend of luxury and charm. A curated aesthetic designed to scream effortless elegance. With her pretty face and expensive taste, she had already gathered tens of thousands of followers. Her newest update was a series of selfies. Judging by the darkening sky in the background, they'd been taken just moments ago. In one of the photos, she sat on a man's lap. He wasn't fully visible, just his hands. One held a phone, the other wrapped around her slender waist. But I recognized the bracelet on his wrist. I'd given it to him. While I was standing in the cold, asking Vincent to wish me a happy birthday, Sophia was sitting in his lap, listening to our conversation. Suddenly, the tears came. From the moment I first suspected Vincent, to the day I confirmed his affair, I thought I'd handled it all with grace, calm, composed, always in control. But I hadn't. Back in college, I refused to take a single dime from my father. I was just an ordinary girl when I met Vincent, living an ordinary life. And he loved me not for my family name or my background, but simply for who I was. His love wasn't complicated, it was pure, fierce, and real. While everyone around us dabbled in fleeting college romances, Vincent pursued me with unwavering sincerity. His confession wasn't some grand gesture, but it was heartfelt, steady, like he'd carved the words straight from his soul. He'd wait for me outside the dorm, eager to walk me to class, to the library. For 4 years, we strolled that familiar path together, hand in hand, under the soft glow of morning light, believing our future was just as bright. When we took our graduation photos after the crowd had dispersed, he surprised me with a bouquet and insisted on one last picture, just the two of us. Elena had said, cradling the flowers and smiling into the camera, "Our past and our future are right here, all in one frame." Did that 22-year-old boy ever imagine that 5 years later we'd end up like this? On our wedding day, I stood before my mother's grave, beaming with joy as I told her I'd found true love. Mom, you'd be so happy for me. Now I could almost feel her watching me as I crumbled, drowning in the same pain she'd once endured. Mom, I whispered, my voice trembling, why do hearts change so fast? I never understood why my father suddenly stopped coming home. And now, I didn't understand how a decade of love with Vincent could vanish overnight, like it had never meant anything at all. Maybe that's just the nature of men. Maybe the only constant in this world is how easily people change. The wind brushed against my face, soft and cool, as if offering some quiet comfort. But my mother had no answers. After I got home, I came down with a fever that burned for an entire day and night. Vincent showed up at the bedroom door late at night, breathless, his face etched with worry. I opened my mouth to ask why he was back, then remembered hazily that I must called him while I was delirious. He crossed the room, pressing his hand to my forehead before sighing softly. Elena, how did you let yourself get like this? My eyes stung. I wanted to ask him the same thing. How did you let us get like this? But what was the point? It was too late for questions. Too late for answers. I refused to go to the hospital, so Vincent rummaged through the cabinets, found some medicine and helped me take it. Then he made me a bowl of oatmeal porridge. Cradling my head in one hand, he gently fed me the medicine. Then, like it was second nature, slipped a toffee candy into my mouth right after. He chuckled softly. You're being so cooperative today. Used to hate taking medicine. That simple, tender comment unraveled me. Tears welled up, slipping down my cheeks before I could stop them. His smile faded, replaced by a flicker of surprise as he reached out, wiping the tears with his thumb. What's wrong? Are you in pain? I shook my head, sniffled, and forced a fragile smile. It's nothing, Vincent. I just missed you. He froze. Guilt flashing in his eyes, a shadow too quick to hide. Was he ashamed? Maybe. Vincent gently patted my back, his voice a soft murmur. But I'm right here, Elena. I didn't respond. Instead, I leaned into him, letting my weight sink into the warmth of his arms. No hesitation. No tension. He wrapped his arms around me, holding me tight. Of course he felt guilty. What kind of man wouldn't, cradling his sick wife, his faithful wife, while hiding the stain of betrayal in his heart? That guilt made him tender, attentive. But tenderness from Vincent had become a rare thing. Rationed mostly for Sophia these days. Felt foreign. Off balance. I nestled deeper into his chest, my cheek brushing against the fabric of his shirt. My eyes drifted to the corner of the room, catching the faint, blinking red light of the surveillance camera. Vincent fed me spoonfuls of porridge, peeled fruit, and checked my temperature every hour. His phone rang once. He glanced at the screen, then silenced it without a second thought, staying by my side as if nothing in the world mattered more. His devotion felt excessive, almost theatrical. For a fleeting moment, it transported me back to the early days of our relationship. Back when his love was untainted, untested, and absolute. It's ironic, really, that it took his loyalty to make our love feel alive again. Vincent /. His phone rang again just as I was drifting off to sleep. Half awake, I squinted at him. Why aren't you answering? He hesitated for a beat, then replied softly, it's nothing. Just a spam call. I watched him quietly, a faint smile curling at the corners of my lips. With a sigh, he set the phone down in front of me. Elena, if you don't believe me, you can check for yourself. Of course, I didn't. But Vincent answered it anyway. When the phone rang for the third time, he glanced at me apologetically. Elena, it's Frank. He needs something, he'll take this. Frank. His closest friend since college. The kind of friend whose name never raised suspicion. Vincent stepped out to take the call. When he returned, he was in a rush, his words spilling out in a hurried breath. Frank's car broke down on the highway. I need to go pick him up. I put on my best concerned face, nodding with understanding, urging him to hurry. As he reached the door, he paused, glancing back at me lying there, feverish and frail. His expression softened with guilt. He doubled back, leaned in, and whispered, I'm sorry. I shook my head, waving off his apology with a gentle smile. It's okay. Really. He kissed my forehead tenderly, his hand brushing against my hair. Take care of yourself while I'm gone, okay? The effort it must have taken for him to shuttle between two lives, to perform affection here while his heart beat elsewhere. After he left, I picked up my phone. Sophia had posted on Instagram about 30 minutes earlier. Just one line. I'm planning a surprise for him. I wondered what kind of surprise that might be. Eventually, exhaustion pulled me under and I drifted off. When I woke up the next morning, her account had been updated again. 4:37 a photo. She was cradling her stomach, the faint curve of her hand resting protectively over it. Behind her stood a man, his face out of frame, captured mid-motion as he shrugged off his jacket. Broad shoulders, narrow waist, tall lean frame. The location tag: San Francisco. The caption read, "Our little family of 3 is finally complete." The comments section was flooded with congratulations. My chest grew colder with every word. Sophia's pregnant. I once dreamed naively of having a child with Vincent. For 3 years of marriage had always brushed off the idea, claiming he was too busy, that we should wait until his career stabilized. I respected his wishes, but in the quiet corners of my heart, I often pictured our future. A family of 3 warm and whole. Our child would grow up in a loving home, with parents who adored each other. Shed blow-out birthday candles on the prettiest little cakes, her eyes glowing with dreams and wishes bathed in soft candlelight. I'd give her all the love and warmth I never had, every missing piece of my own childhood, stitched into hers. But that dream was gone now. Staring at Sophia's post where she gently cradled her growing belly, I found my hand drifting to my own flat stomach. And surprisingly, I felt relief. Thank God I never had a child with Vincent. Because my daughter would have grown up resenting her cheating father just like I had. I opened my messages with Vincent. The chat thread was nearly empty, like we hadn't spoken in ages, even though we shared the same bed not long ago. I typed, "Did you find Frank? When will you be home?" His reply came instantly. "It's a bit complicated. I won't be back anytime soon. Take care of yourself." Short clipped. No warmth. No curiosity about how I was feeling. I didn't push. Just replied with a simple "they." No response after that. Not that I expected one. After all, Sophia had just shared the news of her pregnancy. I could only imagine them now, wrapped up in each other, basking in the glow of their stolen happiness. But I couldn't resist. With a twisted sense of amusement, I forwarded Sophia's late-night Instagram post to Vincent, adding a casual message. "Isn't this the same girl who asked for your contact info at that school lecture? Less than 6 months later and she's already pregnant? She's still in college, right?" No reply. Not even after hours. I told myself not to care. Then I put my phone down, turned off the light and went to sleep alone. After Vincent's vacation ended, he left for his business trip to France. Yet Sophia's social media location still pinned her right where she'd been all along, nestled comfortably in that luxurious San Francisco neighborhood. My house of gold, sheltering his little treasure. 2 weeks later, Vincent returned. By then, I had already woven myself into the very fabric of the company. The network of industry connections had spent years cultivating. Now mine. In the mere month he was away, I thrived, effortlessly stepping into spaces he once dominated, claiming the influence he thought was securely his. My plan was nearly complete. All that remained was the perfect opportunity. And wouldn't you know it, Vincent and Sophia handed it to me on a silver platter. The moment his plane touched down in San Francisco, Vincent didn't come home. He went straight to her. They strolled through upscale malls. His hands full of shopping bags brimming with baby essentials. Everything from tiny nail clippers and baby ear swabs to a luxury bassinet that probably cost more than my first car. But he didn't stop there. Vincent had already hired a private nanny for Sophia, secured an elite private preschool for their child, tuition? A staggering 6 figures per semester. When my private investigator sent me photos of them together, I didn't flinch. I simply scrolled through the images with a detached curiosity, almost amused. Vincent had always loved with intensity. With an all-consuming fire. Once that passion was mine. Now it belonged to someone else. But fate has a sense of humor. The day after he got back, Vincent waltzed through the front door, the Hermes bag ID asked for dangling from his hand. I couldn't help but laugh. He didn't even notice. Like any devoted husband, he leaned down and kissed my forehead, his voice warm and casual. "Elena, I missed you." I took the bag, my smile soft and easy, fingers rifling through the tissue paper until I found the receipt tucked neatly inside. I glanced at it briefly, then flashed him a sweet smile. "You must be exhausted from the trip, darling." He pulled me into his arms, his breath warm against my hair. "Seeing you makes all the exhaustion disappear." I didn't respond. Just smiled, tucked the receipt away and let him hold me. The next day, Sophia posted on social media, flashing her brand new Hermes Birkin. And as I stared at her carefully posed photo, I realized something. The bag she flaunted with such pride was the real one. Mine was a fake. I don't think Vincent intentionally gave me the fake bag while gifting the real one to Sophia. Not because I have faith in his character, or because I believe he still harbors any affection for me. After all, this is the same man who installed surveillance cameras in our bedroom just to prove to that woman that there was nothing physical between us. I stopped resisting my father's money a few years ago, stepping seamlessly into the life of a wealthy heiress. Since then, I've become intimately familiar with luxury goods. Now it only takes me a glance, maybe two, to tell a real Hermes from a counterfeit. Vincent knows this. So if he didn't do it on purpose and yet Sophia ended up with the real bag, the situation became painfully clear. Switching to my dummy account, I posted a casual update, asking for help verifying the authenticity of the bag. The internet didn't disappoint. Eager luxury enthusiasts dissected every detail: stitching, hardware, leather texture. It didn't take long before the verdict was unanimous. The bag was fake. One user even posted a screenshot of Sophia's recent photo in the comments, pointing out, "Sis, sorry to say this, but her bag is definitely real. You can tell by the craftsmanship." Another comment cut straight to the heart of it. "The receipt you have is legit, but the bag isn't. Keep an eye out, sis, your husband might have given the real one to someone else." I couldn't help but laugh. The irony was suffocating. Strangers on the internet could see what was right in front of me, while Vincent hadn't even bothered to cover his tracks. But I wasn't ready to confront him, not yet. I was saving that for the perfect moment, the one that would shatter him completely. The next morning I carried the fake Birkin to work. Vincent drove me, glancing over with a smile as I settled into the passenger seat. "Lena, that bag looks great on you." I forced a polite laugh, hollow and brittle, letting the silence fill the car. Midway through the workday, sitting alone in my office, I opened our chat and sent him a message. "Darling, do you think you got scammed in France? Ava said the bag I carried today is fake." I took a closer look, she might be right. Vincent replied almost immediately. "No way. I bought it from an official boutique. The receipt's legit, isn't it? Maybe it's a quality control issue with the brand." "Doesn't seem like it," I typed back, fingers dancing lightly over the keys. "Think carefully, could someone have swapped it?" Ava mentioned there've been incidents like that recently. Silence. For half an hour, nothing. Then a knock at my door. Vincent stepped in, looking pale. The tension stretched tight across his face. He forced a smile, his voice tinged with forced lightness. "Elena, I'm sorry. If you're not happy with it, I'll buy you another one." I sighed softly, feigning disappointment, but softened my expression with a tender smile. "It's okay, darling. I don't really care about the bag." I reached out, brushing his hand, my voice gentle and warm. "I just want you to spend time with me. Is that okay?" His body tensed for a brief second before he pulled me into an embrace. Guilt dripping from every strained gesture. "Of course. When things calm down at work, we'll go on a trip. How about Norway? You've always wanted to see the fjords, right?" I leaned back slightly, meeting his eyes. "Actually, I'd love to spend a few days in San Francisco. Let's go soon, okay?" His breath hitched just for a moment, but then he smiled tight, rehearsed. Sure. I wasn't sure when Vincent had arranged for Sophia to move out, but clearly he was too late. The cleaning company I'd hired to tidy up the villa called me in a panic. Apparently, Sophia was still there. The cleaner stammered through the phone, clearly startled. I'd explicitly told them the house was unoccupied. I calmly closed the contract I'd just signed, a faint smile tugging at the corners of my lips. Then with practiced ease I said into the phone, "Call the police. Report an unauthorized intruder on the premises." Sophia was quickly taken in for questioning. Vincent stormed into my office not long after, his face pale, panic etched into every line. He froze in front of my desk, mouth opening slightly as if to speak, but no words came out. I leaned back in my chair, crossing my legs, watching him with an expression of mild curiosity, as though he were nothing more than an interesting case study. It struck me then how unfamiliar he felt. 10 years together, and I realized I'd never truly known him at all. After a long, suffocating silence, I finally curled my lips into a faint smile. "Vincent, looks like our trip is cancelled." His eyes widened, the weight of my words hitting him like a slap. The second time I saw Sophia was at the police station. Gone was the vibrant, confident young woman from before. She looked disheveled, her face streaked with tears. The moment she saw Vincent, her eyes lit up. She ran to him, sobbing, burying herself in his arms like a fragile thing seeking shelter. I remained perfectly composed. My lawyer, standing beside me, casually pulled out his phone and snapped a photo. Evidence is always useful. The sharp click of the camera shutter broke the fragile moment. Vincent's face darkened as he gently pushed Sophia away, his expression caught between guilt and discomfort. "Vince," she whimpered, her voice trembling. "That name. I used to call him that back when he still loved me. I teased him once, claiming that nickname was mine alone to use. Head laughed and agreed, swearing it was ours just like everything else we shared. Now standing before me, Vincent's face was a battlefield of emotions, regret? Relief? Maybe both. After the officers got the basic information, they left us to sort things out. I stepped forward, pulled out a stack of photos, him and Sophia cozy in the villa, the luxury items, the fake Hermes bag, and threw them in his face. Vincent flinched, stumbling back a step, but didn't say a word. Sophia rushed to shield him, her eyes blazing with fury. "What's your problem?" he snapped. I tilted my head slightly, my voice smooth as glass. "Sophia, shouldn't I be the one asking you that?" I took a step closer, my tone soft but sharp enough to cut. "Sleeping with my husband, living in my house, stealing my bag. Tell me, Sophia, do you have any self-respect? What's it like being the other woman?" Vincent's face turned ashen, but Sophia wasn't done. She straightened, her cheeks flushed with anger. "Vincent and I love each other. The one who's not loved is the real homewrecker." I nearly laughed. Turning to Vincent, I raised an eyebrow, waiting. He snapped, his voice sharp and cold. "Shut up, Sophia." She stared at him, her expression crumbling, disbelief, heartbreak, confusion. The man who'd once worshipped her now looked like he wanted to be anywhere but there. Vincent turned back to me, reaching out as if to take my hand. I stepped aside. His hand hung in the air for a moment before falling uselessly to his side. "Vincent," I said quietly, my eyes locked on his, "what are you going to do about her?" He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Finally, his gaze dropped to the floor and he whispered, "Elena, I'm sorry. He's pregnant." There was not an answer, but all the confirmation I needed. "Well then," I said with a bright, almost cheerful smile, "let's get divorced." Vincent's head snapped up. "He'll keep the assets. He'll leave with nothing. And before that, he'll be reclaiming everything you gave to Sophia." Sophia's scream pierced the room. "Why? You can't do that." I didn't even look at her. My focus remained on Vincent. "I've already prepared the divorce papers. You can sign them now if you'd like." I paused, letting the silence stretch, then added, "Of course, if you refuse, well, you know I have all the evidence I need. And I'm very good at using it." Vincent's eyes squeezed shut. His face twisted in something between pain and defeat. Sophia lunged, grabbing his sleeve, sobbing hysterically. "Vincent, you can't give up the money. What about our baby? What are we supposed to do?" He opened his eyes, tears glistening but unshed, and met my gaze. "Hey," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "We'll sign." After the divorce, I contacted HR and had Vincent terminated. His presence at the company was no longer necessary, just a shadow of a past that held no weight. Per the non-compete agreement he'd signed, he was barred from working in any related industry for several years. In return, he received a hefty severance package, a small price for his exit. The day he came to collect his things, he insisted on seeing me. I agreed. He stepped into my office, the man I'd spent 10 years of my life with. But he looked like a ghost of himself, thinner, dark stubble shadowing his jaw, his complexion pale and drawn. He stood awkwardly in front of my desk while I calmly finished reviewing a document. Then, with deliberate ease, I closed the folder and looked up at him. "Mr. Richard," I said, my voice cool and crisp, "state your business. My time is valuable." His mouth opened slightly, but no words came out at first. Finally, he swallowed hard, his voice a brittle whisper. "Elena, it seems like you never really loved me." For a second I thought I'd misheard him. Then the absurdity of his words sank in and I couldn't help but laugh. "Mr. Richard," I said with a light, mocking smile, "is that what love means to you? Do you think love requires me to sob, beg, and humiliate myself to keep you? Is that what you wanted?" My smile faded, leaving only cold clarity. "Don't forget it was you who cheated first. I leaned back slightly, my gaze steady and unflinching. Yes, I loved you once. But I love myself more. I refused to keep suffering for someone who threw me away. His face darkened, his expression tightening with every word. Softening my tone just slightly, I added, you love Sophia. I let you go so you could be with her. What's there to complain about? His eyes grew distant as if he'd just realized something, his voice faint. Yes, I love her. Elena. I'm sorry. I fell for someone else. At least he was honest. For a brief moment, it felt surreal, like this entire decade had been some elaborate joke. Maybe Sophia really was his true love. After all, what else could explain a man so easily discarding 10 years for someone he'd known less than 6 months? But none of it mattered anymore. I smiled, my voice light, almost cheerful. Then I wish you both a long, happy life together. 2 weeks later, I posted an update about the infamous fake Hermes bag on social media. Mystery solved. Turns out my ex-husband's thoughtful gift from his business trip was swapped by his mistress. Oh, and surprise, she'd been living in a villa under my name, parading herself online as some luxury trophy wife, racking up followers. Well, I'm divorced now. Reclaimed every asset. The cheating ex left with nothing. The post blew up. Comments poured in, people cheering me on, throwing virtual confetti, shouting queen behavior and so satisfying. It didn't take long before someone dug up what appeared to be Sophia's account. And just like that, she became the internet's favorite scandal. Self-proclaimed college classmates emerged from the shadows, claiming she was a serial mistress with a long history of wrecking relationships. Then came an alleged high school classmate, fanning the flames even further with a juicy tale, how Sophia had been caught dating a married man back in the day, only for his wife to find out and break her leg in a confrontation, forcing her to transfer schools. I never confirmed whether Sophia was the mistress in question. But the damage was done. Her past painted itself across every screen, pixel by pixel. The next time I heard Vincent's name was in a news report, something dark, something violent. Had stabbed Sophia. And now he was in prison. Words spread through the office like wildfire. One of my colleagues filled in the details between meetings as casually as someone might mention the weather. Apparently, Sophia had burned through Vincent's meager savings in no time. Once he was broke, she dumped him without hesitation. But Vincent couldn't let go. Clinging to what was left, he used the child as an excuse, begging her to stay. He refused to believe the rumors, convinced that the Sophia he knew was different. That she loved him. Until she told him the truth. The child wasn't his. In fact, she wasn't even sure who the father was. Does it matter? Shed reportedly said. As long as it's not yours. I just needed someone rich enough to cash in on. She admitted it without flinching. Shed liked Vincent because he had money, sure, but more than that. Because had been stupid enough to genuinely love her. She hadn't expected our marriage to crumble so quickly, or for him to walk away empty-handed. All those gifts gone. And for what? Her time, her effort, her body, all wasted. Worse than being a prostitute, Shed complained, according to one of her friends. Funny thing is, her other clients didn't care. They knew what she was. They weren't looking for loyalty. But Vincent said he loved her. So he stabbed her. When Sophia woke up in the hospital, she cursed his name, screaming at him through clenched teeth. You never loved me. You just hated me for ruining your life, your marriage, your job, everything. You're pathetic. And maybe she was right. Maybe Vincent didn't love her anymore. Maybe he just hated that Shed turned him into nothing and then tossed him aside like he'd never mattered. I heard all of this from Ava the same day I signed a major international contract. She laughed, shaking her head. Karma really did its job, huh? I just smiled. Because none of it mattered anymore. Some people, some stories, they fade into the background. Like echoes at the foot of a mountain.